happy to see you, Laura.
I'm happy to see you too. How are you?
I'm great. Are you ready to have some uncomfortable questions?
Hell yes. Let's bring it on. Let's have those uncomfortable questions.
I think it's important for us to ask and get into each other's worlds so that we can understand, life in this multifaceted way,
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that we're doing this.
And thank you so much for doing this with me. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm very excited to see where this conversation goes.
Me too.
Okay, so ready? Are we ready for our first uncomfortable question?
Yes.
My question to you is, when did you know racism/prejudice existed?
It's interesting. I think as a Black person, it's something that we always kind of know existed underlyingly. But, you hear about it in history books and, maybe you'll hear stories from your family, but it's really when you have your kind of first experience with it where it becomes real, And I did grow up in a town that was very diverse. I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey. Shout out to them. And they did the best they could to, have us all together. And, it really was a diverse town. I mean, Muslim friends, Indian friends, Chinese friends, Vietnamese, everyone. Black, white, the gamut. But I do remember that there was an instance in middle school where the girls' bathroom was riddled with all these racist comments. And it made me look at these classmates that I had grown up with a lot differently because I couldn't tell who was who anymore. I'd grown up in this world where, we were painting "We are many, we are one" on the walls, and I was truly believing that because I had a visual, idea of what that looked like in my town. Mm-hmm. And shout out to Dina, we were the first town to voluntarily integrate our school system. I mean, the town really is for civil rights. But because I didn't know who did it, and because everyone else was silent about it, it was like they might as well have done it. So it made it a little interesting going forward of oh no, we are many, we are one. Is that a lie? Oh, okay. Shit. Damn. I wanted to believe that, So I think that was my first taste of it. I think that must have been 5th or 6th grade, something like that. That's the first one where I was like, oh, wait, hold on. People really don't like me.
And those were all people that I assume you had been friends with, you trusted, and so it was suddenly the carpet was ripped out from under you.
Absolutely. I mean, my first best friends, were two Jewish kids. You know what I mean? Two Jewish white boys. I loved them. Brett and Evan. I loved them. Those were my homies. So I just, it definitely felt like the carpet was ripped out from under me. It's damn.
I'm really sorry. That's really awful.
Oh, I appreciate that. But, we are here to ask these questions and share these stories. So I will ask you, when did you first realize that, and, you can answer it twofold. When did you realize that racism was an issue? Well, I guess we can get to privilege later, but when did you realize that, racism was an issue and that it was something that people were experiencing?
So for me, I had the opposite of where you grew up. I grew up in a very, very white area. Very, very white. I grew up in Westchester County, in Rye, and it's very, very white. Now, I knew prejudice existed at a very, very young age because my family, they're all Holocaust survivors. So that I knew existed, and that was something that was very intrinsically taught to me at a very, very young age. But racism against Black people, I think I only really learned about as this abstract thing in elementary school. And it was something that was taught oh yes, this was racism and it happened. And it was taught in a very whitewashed way as to Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, let's let's color pictures of them. And I Had a Dream was a thing, but it's gone now. And And I'm trying to really, really remember, like, when was the first time I actually had, like, a relationship with another black person, and I don't think that was till 6th grade when I had my first black teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. And then...
Wow.
And then racism, I really started more learning about it then, I think was really when, in a much more involved way. But I think before that, it was very... It almost didn't even exist. It was there as this just very old concept that didn't exist anymore.
Yeah, like an ideology that was dead, that was just alive in history books. Like they marched and fixed it in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I think then after that, any of my exposure to it would have been through TV shows when, like, I would watch shows that centered around, like, a black family. Like, I watched, like, Smart Kid, which was on Disney Channel, and they covered it actually in a really, really great way, in a few different ways. Or when I watched, like, that old cartoon, like, Proud Family. Mm-hmm. Love that TV show, it was great. But, like, that's how I learned that, like, sort of cued in. But again, it was still this really weird, abstract thing that I was like, but this doesn't exist anymore.
So when did you learn that privilege was a thing, white privilege?
I don't think I was able to fully, I definitely think I started learning about it in high school. And I remember it came in these really, really weird ways because I went to a small high school and there were maybe 3 black people, 3 or 4. Again, for me, I grew up in this very naive setting of just like, racism doesn't exist. It's fine. All is well. Racism exists like in this weird back alley in like Arkansas. No offense to Arkansas, but like that's what I thought. And then there were these little cues and clues that I kind of picked up on. I remember there was this girl, and she was black. And she was talking to our theater teacher, who was this great, amazing teacher, and she was telling him that one of the other, because there were literally like one other black student in our high school, was told by one of the white students saying like, oh, you don't even act black, it's not like you're even black. And she overheard that, and she was really, really affected and hurt by that. And so I was listening to our teacher really just listen to her. And he basically told all of us to like, you shut up right now. We're just gonna hear her right now. And we are going to listen to her and figure out what she needs and how we can support her, because this is a problem. Mm-hmm. And that started cueing me into white privilege and realizing, why aren't there more black kids at my school?
Wow.
Why is this? Why? And that's when I started, I would say the wheels started turning. When did you start noticing privilege and that you were at the disadvantage of that?
You know, it's interesting growing up, again, in a very diverse town. But I realized that there was a privilege. And it's interesting because this should have been the first time that I realized that there was an issue with race. But I think because I was so young, I didn't fully put together the pieces. But there was a young man who was shot in 1990 in the back. And his name was Philip Pinnell. And he was shot in a routine traffic stop. And he was shot 5 times in the back by cops. And this was before hashtag, this before people could say, things out loud on the internet. And my brother was stopped after that 5 times by the cops, like in a month, And it was this thing where black men couldn't drive their parents' cars in our neighborhoods. We lived among white people, and they couldn't drive a Honda, they couldn't drive a Benz, they couldn't drive a Mercedes, a Toyota, without being automatically assumed that they stole it. It became this crazy thing. I mean, it was so crazy that my brother was on the cover of the New York Times with a young kid who actually later committed suicide. I remember being so scared every time my brother left the house, because I didn't know, I just didn't know what was happening. I didn't put together then this was a systematic thing that was, you know what I mean? Police brutality. I was like, 8, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I remember marching for him, and I do remember having the thought of like, well, does everyone have this problem of driving their cars? like, can you just not have a nice car? And it's like, oh no, it's us. It's us that can't do that.
And you were 8
but
when that's...
it's, yeah. But but then how does that make sense when everyone has a nice car? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are we supposed to drive? So it just didn't compute for me. But I recognized that there were things then that I was gonna have some issues doing that other people weren't. Like driving. So, yeah.
And at 8 years old, you were already putting this together. That's how...
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't driving. I wasn't a man, so I wasn't putting but I recognized that, like, if it was happening to my brother, what is that going to mean for me? Am I going to be... I still don't like driving to this day. I would rather not. I'd be a passenger any day. I was talking to Brandy about trying to do like a comedy tour, and I want to like go to white towns and talk to white people, but I told her, I was like, I'm not doing without a team of white people. Abso-fucking-lutely not.
You need to make sure that Karens are on your side.
Oh my God, I need a fucking RV full of Karens, okay? And I'm not saying shit when we get pulled over. No, not today. I'll do the Lord's work, but I need white people protecting me, okay?